the biennial report, it's actually made up of 4 forms. Some of these forms you might have to fill out. Some of them you might not have to. We'll kind of talk about who has to fill them out, who doesn't. The first form, which everyone definitely is going to fill out, is called the Site Identification Form, or the abbreviated Site ID form. So let's kind of take a closer look. The actual name of the form is Form 8700-12. That might ring a bell for some of you. And this form is submitted actually immediately when you become a generator of hazardous waste. So this is required even before you fill out a biennial report. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You're identifying some information about your site. And this should have been filled out a long time ago to notify the EPA in your state that you're a generator of hazardous waste. And when you filled out that form, and when I say you, I mean your site filled the form out, your site would have received back what's called an EPA ID number. That's just a site-specific number that says, hey, this is the number representing this particular person's site. And moving forward, though, when the generator improvement rule came out a couple years ago, EPA said, okay, large quantity generators, we want you to re-notify every once in a while. That just means, hey, you have to tell us you're still a large quantity generator. This is required every 2 years. And the good news is, since it's doing it every 2 years, we can do this as part of our biennial report, actually. So there's not really all that much different. You're still going to fill out that biennial report, just you do the site ID form at the same time. The site ID form, by the way, is also used for other purposes beyond the biennial report. For instance, if you want to take advantage of those episodic rules that I've mentioned, if you're a small or a very small quantity generator, you would have to notify your state ahead of time, and you do that using the site ID form, just to warn them, hey, we're going to do an episodic event. If you work for a TSDF site, you'd have to get a permit to be one of those types of sites. You'd use a site ID form for that. And for my squidgies, my small quantity generators, they also have to re-notify, just like large quantity generators, not as frequently. They actually have to do that every 4 years instead of every 2 years. They don't have to create a biennial report, but they would still have to fill out the site ID form every 4 years. But let's focus more on the biennial report aspect of this form. So if you kind of zoom in on the site ID form, if you take a look at item 1, which is basically just box 1 of the form, we've kind of circled for you where you would be checking off the form if you're a large quantity generator. So as you can see, we checked off the box that says we are submitting this as a component of our hazardous waste report for 2025, because that's the reporting year, right? And then right underneath it, there's a little sub box. You can check that one off as well. You're essentially just saying, I'm a large quantity generator when you mark that box. Beyond that, filling out the form is quite easy, to be honest. It's really just providing some basic information about your site. So you're going to be writing down things like your EPA ID number, the site name, the address, details about who owns the site, your industry sector code. Some other things that would also go into the form would be your generator status. So you just say, I'm a large quantity generator. You'd also list your hazardous waste codes, your FKP, U, and D codes. Those are codes that just represent the type of hazardous waste that you're generating. And something else that's also going to go on the site ID form. You may or may not have to include this. It depends on whether it's, you take advantage of this. Most states have adopted a relief that allows you to move hazardous waste from a very small site over to a large quantity generator site, as long as they're under the same ownership. If you're going to take advantage of that, it does go on the site ID form. You'll notice it's an addendum. It's basically an extra piece of paper kind of that gets attached to the site ID form. And you just have to provide just a little information about that very small quantity generator site that you're receiving waste from. Now, at the very bottom of the form, you'll notice I skipped a whole bunch of sections, by the way, because I told you I'm not going to cover every section one by one. At the bottom of the form, that is where you're going to sign it in item 19, where you say, hey, I certify under penalty of law, yada, yada, yada. If you're curious who can fill out that signature, the certification statement on the form does have to be signed by either the owner, the operator, or some type of authorized representative for the facility. And I'd say a lot of us probably use that last one, the authorized representative. We did include what that would actually include. It just has to be a person responsible for overall operation of the site. So that could be a plant manager, it could be a superintendent, person of equal responsibility. They can sign off on that site ID form. Some additional activities that are regulated under RCRA will also be included on the site ID form. This would include transportation. This would also include import and export type of stuff. If you do those things, most people don't import or export hazardous waste. And you'd also need to include some information about some other types of wastes that aren't fully part of the hazardous waste regulations. And what I mean by that is your site might generate universal waste. Those are just very common waste streams that everybody generates. That's why they call it universal. This would include things like batteries, lamps, which are just light bulbs. It includes aerosol cans. Those actually have their own special rules in Part 273 that are easier to follow than the normal hazardous waste regs. Those would be included on the site ID form. And then same is kind of true for used oil. Used oil has its own separate set of rules in Part 279 that are a lot easier to follow than the hazardous waste regs. That will actually be included on the site ID form. I mentioned that hazardous waste pharmaceutical rulemaking. So if you are following those rules, and the people that would follow those would be like healthcare facilities. That would be things like hospitals, pharmacies, veterinary clinics. If you're following pharmaceutical rulemaking rules, that goes on the site ID form. If you work for an academic institution, that just means a college. They'll have laboratories there, right? You probably did this if you went to college. You took lab science class and stuff like that. There's some special rules for academic labs that some people take advantage of, and if they're following those special rules, it goes on the site ID form. Again, we're not really going to focus so much on those. I'm just making you aware of those.